Mexico Housing Authority Public Housing Move-In Orientation Video. Welcome to the Mexico Public Housing Program. This orientation video will explain the MHA policies, your lease with MHA, and other important information. On the left side of the move-in packet, you will receive MHA standardized charges, things you should know about Mexico Housing Authority, public housing grievance procedure, community service and self-sufficiency requirement, possible community service agencies, Notification of Violence Against Women Act, Violence Against Women pamphlet, and Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home pamphlet. Move-in packet continued. On the right side of the move-in packet, you will receive the following to complete and sign: Ameren, Missouri account form, Section 8 waitlist removal form, MHA crime-free housing policy, authorization for the release of Information and Privacy Act notice form, release of information authorization form, MHA photography release form, declaration of Section 214 status, lead disclosure form, MHA community service certification, enterprise income verification pamphlet or EIV, 10-day income reporting requirement form, MHA smoke detector agreement, MHA smoke-free policy, MHA pet policy, MHA cable, satellite, internet, and telephone agreement, HUD supplemental and optional contact form or the emergency contact, debts owed to public housing agencies and terminations, and the pre-authorized debit agreement. Other documents you will receive or sign: MHA lease, the notice of rent amount, flat rent or income-based choice form, TTP income sheet, and the move-in checklist. Here is an example of the VAWA or Violence Against Women Act pamphlet that you will receive in your move-in packet. Here is an example of the Protect Your Family from Lead pamphlet that you will receive in your move-in packet. Public housing authorities, or PHAs, own and manage public housing nationwide. The housing, which can be garden walk-up apartments, high-rises, duplexes, and/or single-family homes, is owned by the Housing Authority and regulated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The Housing Authority must follow HUD regulations when managing the public housing program. Many regulations are required by law. The purpose of public housing. Public housing provides to low-income families housing that is decent, safe, sanitary, and in good repair. This video is available to help you understand what living in public housing may be like and how it can be different than renting in the open market. It is important to know that public housing assistance is tied to the dwelling unit you will be living in. That means if you decide to move out of public housing, the assistance won't follow you. Fair housing. The Housing Authority does not discriminate based on race, color, national origin, sex, age, religion, disability or handicap, or familial status. You are protected from discrimination under federal laws. If you believe you have received different or unfair treatment because you are a member of any of the protected classes listed, you have the right to file a complaint with HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. Every housing authority is required to display fair housing posters and provide information on how to file a complaint. Here is an example of the fair housing pamphlet that you will receive in your move-in packet. Your lease. When you are offered to accept a certain dwelling unit, the lease-up process begins with the inspection of the unit, payment of the initial rent and security deposit, and then signing the lease. Your housing authority representative will explain the lease to you. Lease continued. The lease lists the things that you agree to do and not do as a resident, as well as the things the housing authority agrees to do. There are some violations of the lease that require the housing authority to begin the lease termination and eviction process. There are other violations that, if serious or chronic, allow the housing authority to terminate the lease. It is very important for you to understand both your obligations and the housing authority's obligations under the lease. Here is an example of the Mexico Housing Authority lease. Obligations under the lease. Pay your rent on time. The Housing Authority will tell you how much rent to pay. When you move into public housing and every year at your reexamination, you will be given a choice paying your rent based on your income, called income-based rent, or a flat rent amount that represents what your dwelling unit could rent for in the open market. The Housing Authority will provide you the rent amount under each option and let you make the best choice for your family. Obligations under the lease continued. If you choose to pay income-based rent, you will need to notify the Housing Authority when family income changes. Your Housing Authority representative will explain how and when these changes must be reported. Only authorized persons are allowed to live in your home. You are not allowed to rent out any part of your home to boarders. In addition, the Housing Authority has a limit on how long guests can stay with you. This is an important policy you agree to abide by when you sign a lease. Obligations under the lease continued. If you want to move someone into your unit, you must notify the Housing Authority first. The PHA will need to do a criminal background check and approve the additional family member. If your family size changes for any reason, such as the birth of a child or a family member moves out, you need to notify the Housing Authority as well. You must get the Housing Authority's authorization before you have an animal or pet. The Housing Authority has a written pet policy that will be important for you to understand. Here is an example of the MHA pet policy that you will be required to sign at your move-in appointment. Obligations under the lease continued. You may not make any alterations to your home or the property without permission from the Housing Authority. When you sign the lease, you agree to be careful to prevent fires or safety hazards in your home and on the premises. If there is a dangerous or life-threatening situation or condition, notify emergency numbers first, then call the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority will tell you how to contact them if there is an after-hours emergency. It's very important to keep this information by your phone. Let the Housing Authority know if there is any repairs needed to your home. It's better to fix something early and prevent further damage from occurring. Obligations under the lease continued. In public housing, just like anywhere else, you need to conduct yourself in a neighborly manner and show respect to other residents. This means you are also responsible for the behavior of guests and visitors. You must make sure that no household member or guest engages in any drug-related criminal activity on or off the premises, or any criminal activity that threatens the health, safety, or right to peaceful enjoyment of the premises by other residents. Here is an example of the MHA crime-free policy that you will be required to sign at your move-in appointment. Obligations under the lease continued. Congress passed a law requiring all adult public housing residents, unless they are exempt under the law, to participate in community service. This is a provision of your lease. Community service is defined as volunteer work or participation in an economic self-sufficiency activity at least 8 hours per month. Community service can help you gain skills, link up to resources in your community, and get ready for work. Adult residents who are exempt from the requirement are adults 62 years of age or older, adults with a disability that are unable to comply with community service requirements due to their disability or a caretaker of such person, adults that are working a certain amount of hours per week, or adults that are receiving welfare assistance and are in compliance with or exempted from welfare work requirements. Talk to the Housing Authority representative if you think you may be exempt from the community service requirement. For those family members who must meet the community service requirement, there are many terrific volunteer opportunities and self-sufficiency activities. Ask your Housing Authority representative about them. Here is an example of the community service and self-sufficiency requirement information that you will receive in your move-in packet, along with possible community service agencies that you can do your volunteer work. Inspections and repairs. The Housing Authority is required to do a thorough inspection every year of your home, the building exterior, the building systems, and the site. In addition, there may be a number of times throughout the year that HUD or the Housing Authority staff will need to come in your unit to inspect or make repairs. You will be given written notice at least 48 hours in advance of any HUD or Housing Authority representative entering your home unless there is cause to believe an emergency is happening. In that case, Housing Authority staff will enter to take care of the emergency, and if no one is home, a notice stating the date and time of entry and the reason for the entry will be left in the unit. Inspections and repairs continued. The purpose of the annual inspection is to make sure the unit is safe, sanitary, and in good repair. The Housing Authority will inspect carefully to make sure that everything works and is in good condition. If there is damage beyond normal wear and tear caused by anyone in your household or guests, you will be charged for the damage. All areas inside and outside of the unit must be uncluttered and hazard-free. Trash should be properly contained and stored outside. Heating and air conditioning units and all appliances should be free of grease and dirt. All appliances, smoke detectors, and plumbing must work. This includes sinks, toilets, bathtubs, and showers. All storage areas, including closets, cupboards, and pantries, need to be clean and contain no flammables. The outside and yard areas should be free of trash and debris. This also means no abandoned cars or graffiti, and nothing should block access to the unit. It is your responsibility to keep your yard, outside walls, porches, sidewalks, and steps clean and free of hazards. Especially important is to clean up food and trash after meals. If you can't wash the dishes right away, rinse them before you stack them. Also, be sure to clean your stove and refrigerator often. Here is an example of the standardized charges that you will receive in your move-in packet. Things you should know about Mexico Housing Authority. Pest control and MHA management will be in every unit once a month on the second and fourth Friday. The second Friday, we will be on Trinity, Garfield, Seminary, Central, Toronto Boulevard, Union, Calhoun, and Bolivar. The fourth Friday of each month, we will be on McFarland, Fieldcrest, Missouri, Wade, Liberty, Breckenridge, Singleton, Buchanan, Hassan, Holt, Lafayette, and Boulevard. Rent is due on the first of every month. We accept money orders only, no cash or checks. Residents are responsible for having the utilities on always in the head of household's name. Annual housekeepings are mandatory every year at your annual review. The Resident Association meeting is every third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m. at the Garfield Community Center. Always make sure windows are not blocked by furniture and that one is always 100% accessible to get out of in case of an emergency. No items are to be stored around the hot water heater or in the furnace area or closet, not even a broom. Cable wires should not be across the doorways nor walkways in the apartments. No indoor furniture outdoors, or you will be charged for the Mexico Housing Authority to remove the furniture. Trash cans, charcoal barbecue grills, and bicycles and riding toys are to be stored in the rear of the unit. We do have a 24-hour emergency maintenance number, which is our office number, the 573-581-2294. Trash pickup days. On Mondays, they will pick up at Hassan Drive and Boulevard. On Tuesdays, they pick up on McFarland and Fieldcrest. On Wednesdays, they pick up Garfield, Trinity, Seminary, Central, Bolivar, Calhoun, Holt, Lafayette, Union, and Toronto Boulevard. On Thursdays, they pick up on Breckenridge, Singleton, Buchanan, and Liberty. And on Fridays, they pick up on Missouri and Wade Streets. Annual re-examination. In addition to annual inspections, another important annual activity is the re-examination of family income and composition. The type of rent you are paying will impact the type of re-examination the PHA will conduct. If you choose to pay income-based rent, you will be required to provide current and accurate information about all family members and the income for each member. This may include providing documents such as pay stubs, award letters, bank statements, and income tax forms. The Housing Authority will then verify the information you provide and compare to income information the PHA obtains through state and federal databases. The information gathered will then be used to determine the amount of rent you will pay. It sounds like a lot of paperwork, but because public housing is funded by taxpayer dollars, the rent charged to each family must be correct. Annual re-examination continued. If you choose to pay flat rent, your annual reexamination will likely be limited to a review of your family composition where you'll be asked to certify who is living in the home with you. This is because housing authorities are only required to review the income of families paying flat rent every 3 years. Transfers. When you sign your lease, you agree to transfer to another unit of the appropriate size and type when available if your current home is no longer suitable for your family. The housing authority may require you to transfer to a smaller dwelling if family members have moved out, or a larger dwelling if your unit has become overcrowded. The housing authority may have to transfer you because your current unit is scheduled for construction, modernization, or even to be torn down. These are some examples of mandatory transfers. You can be sure that the housing authority won't require you to transfer until an appropriate dwelling unit is available for you. Also, you have the right to appeal this and any other action the housing authority takes that you don't believe is fair. Transfers continued. There may also be reasons that your family wants to move to a different dwelling unit. You may need to move to another type of dwelling unit for medical reasons, your family size may change, and you simply may want a larger home, or you may feel you need to move to another part of town in order to be closer to work or doctors. These are transfers that you request. The housing authority has a transfer policy that can lead you through this process. You can contact your housing authority representative anytime you believe you need to transfer to another dwelling unit. Lease termination and eviction. There are situations where serious or repeated lease violations may require the housing authority to terminate your lease, and your family would have to move out of public housing through the eviction process. The housing authority is required to notify you in writing if they intend to terminate your lease and which lease provision or provisions they believe you have violated. Examples of activities that could lead to eviction are failure to make rent payments, drug-related and other criminal activity, or providing false income information. You can appeal any action or failure to act on the part of the housing authority that adversely affects you. The purpose of the grievance process is to provide you with the means to settle an issue without having to go to court. In filing a grievance, you will need to follow the housing authority's grievance policy. When you sign the lease, you will receive a copy of this policy, and your housing authority representative can answer any questions you have. Lease termination and eviction continued. If you are served a lease termination notice, under most circumstances, you will be able to appeal the authority's decision through the housing authority's grievance policy, and in all cases, you will be able to appeal it in court or administrative hearing. Here's an example of the MHA Public Housing Grievance Procedure that you will receive at your move-in appointment. Reasonable accommodation for disability. If you or anyone in your family is a person with a disability and you are having trouble either getting in or out of or around your home, or you need some flexibility on a housing authority service or policy in order to have the same opportunity as that afforded to others, you have the right to ask for a reasonable accommodation. There must be a disability-related need for the accommodation, and the request must be reasonable as determined by the PHA. Requesting a ramp to allow access in and out of the unit because someone in your family uses a wheelchair is just one example of a reasonable accommodation request. The housing authority has a process to receive and evaluate requests for a reasonable accommodation. Confidentiality will be protected. The housing authority will ask only enough questions about your disability to verify that there is a limitation caused by the disability and that the request would relieve the limitation. Family Self-Sufficiency Program. Did you know that there are situations where you can have an increase in your earned income without it affecting your rent? The housing authority is required to offer this work incentive called the Earned Income Disallowance to qualified families. Qualified families may include residents that have been receiving welfare assistance, are participating in economic self-sufficiency or job training programs, or have been unemployed for 1 or more years. You could go to work and it wouldn't count against your rent until you get stabilized in your work. Ask your housing authority representative if you think you may qualify for this disallowance. Family Self-Sufficiency Program continued. If you are paying for child care while working, actively looking for work, or furthering your education, then another benefit you may be eligible for is a child care expense deduction. Ask your housing authority representative more about this deduction if you believe you may qualify. Welcome to your new home. If you have any questions at any time, please contact an MHA representative at 573-581-2294. You can also visit our webpage for additional information or resources at mexicoha.com. And don't forget, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram.